Welcome. Tech issues aside, excited to talk with you today about using emails and doing it in a way that doesn't suck. You know, social media gets so much attention, and it's sort of the sexier of the two, but email is still incredibly powerful and can actually be automated more effectively in some ways than social media. But today we're going to talk about some best practices in general, so please take some notes as you go. So, as always, if you have a question, go ahead and post it in the chat panel. If you have something you want us to cover in an upcoming issue or edition of Office Hours, please send it to us offline. We'd love to cover something pertinent to your business. So we're going to run through sort of a wide range, a survey of emails, starting with how do you actually build your list and how do you segment it, because if you don't have effective control of who gets what messages, you're going to get a lot of angry email recipients. We're going to go through what makes for a good email newsletter. We're going to specifically focus on content-oriented newsletters as opposed to other sorts of announcements or business or promotional or whatever, although we will briefly mention those. We're going to highlight a few things what not to do. I didn't look at the attendee list, but I know a number of our members are often guilty of a few of these, so hopefully you'll find something you can improve upon, and then a little bit about how to monetize emails directly. So why is email important? Well, wouldn't you know it, email drives traffic really well. If you were here last week, we talked about which social platform should you be on. Twitter is an interesting platform, but doesn't drive any traffic. Email is not the case at all. This is something you can see from Chester County Press, and you know, in real time, there was over 100 people on their site. Now, if you're used to hearing about billions of people on Facebook, that might not sound like a lot, but for a local site, 100 plus concurrent users is killing it. So that's quite good. So this drives traffic when you do it the right way. In their case, they send a weekly newsletter, which is pretty effective.
Yeah, and I'll just add here that, you know, this is a repeatable thing that you can do every week. And, you know, with this particular example, every time they send an email newsletter, they get a huge spike in traffic. So it becomes a significant driver you know, of the traffic to their site. And of course, the other reason you do email newsletters is because you can monetize that, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on.
You know, one last point here is that email and social work together very nicely. If 0 people go to your website, how many people can share content from your website? Of course, it's a trick question because the answer is 0. So the notion of going viral, and there's some really great math, and we did a blog post on it a while ago about what going viral means. But the bigger that seed group is, the more people that get contagious with your content, the more viral it will spread. So if you're able to drive a lot of people from email to your website, if your content's any good, they're going to hit the like button, and now all of a sudden your email list is growing your social media reach. That's pretty sweet. So, okay, obviously if you have a list of 0, that's also not great. So how can you build your list through audience development? Well, if you're a print publisher, clearly you've got a print avenue to promote. And there's a few highlights here. You can see in the right-hand side there's the e-newsletter, there's some graphics, there's some text. It looks like you could enter your name or your email address in that box. But the idea here is you're making visual connections for your readers with a real clear call to action. And you want to communicate what people will get, how often they will get it, and why. If you say, sign up for our newsletter that we might not ever send, that's not very compelling. Or if you signal that with your actions, it's not very compelling. But if you can say, you know, don't miss a headline, get the most important news, get the most important events on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, or even, heck, you set your frequency, all of a sudden now people feel much more aware of what they're signing up for.
Yeah, and I'll just add, a lot of that is psychological, right? You know, if you say you're going to do weekly and you miss a week here and there, you know, it's not going to be the end of the world. Like, your advertisers are not going to be like, oh my God, why didn't they send me this email this week, right? But if you do it consistently, and we'll talk about that later on as well, you know, they begin to expect it, they begin to get excited about it, they begin to look for it, and, you know, it all builds on it. So, you know, this might be a little bit of a psychological trigger, but it makes people feel more comfortable in getting them into the initial sign-up period. So that's why we want you to say, hey, we're going to send this weekly, or we're going to send it monthly, or whatever it is. But the key here is to say it and then to try to follow through.
And of course, from time to time, you may make additions or adjustments to your list, and you can make those mid-course adjustments. Now, of course, the things that work in print in terms of your call to action might be a little different online, but the concept's the same. You want to clearly articulate what it is people will get, why, and so forth. One of the things we love, and we built a feature some 6 months ago into our tech, was to allow you to add an embed onto every article and or every event. And that's what you see here, an opt-in. You know, it's one thing to say, sign up for my email newsletter, and there's no context, and I don't really connect the dots. But if I just read an article that I really liked, and you say, hey, if you like this, sign up to get more, oh, I'm already in that space. There's not a lot of additional descriptions. So you can see what we've done here with this call to action.
Yeah, and the other key thing here, and we talked about this a little bit last week, is that the behavior of people that find you through Facebook, meaning they're scrolling through their news feed and they click an article and they come to you, the typical behavior is they click the link on Facebook, they read the article, and then they go back to Facebook immediately. They're not going to spend a ton of time exploring your site. And having that box right there at the bottom of the page helps convert that segment of your audience in a really effective way. There may be different use cases, and there's going to be some overlap, but this is particularly effective with your Facebook audience, and that's why we suggest doing it here, as well as at the bottom of events, right? You can have them almost automatically segment into a group for people who just want to know what's going on in the area, and we'll talk about that in a few as well.
I love that point about social media, right? Because now you can see that you send an email, and hopefully it's good, and you have a list, and people go to your site, and they look at your content, and they share it to Facebook, and then people come from Facebook, and they're like, oh, yeah, I like this site. Sign up for my email list. And it's this very nice ebb and flow back and forth between email and social that will really bear fruit as you go forward. So
I will say, just to interrupt Brian real quick, one thing I forgot to say is make it really simple in this form, right? You don't want to give them 15 options, right? I want to be in this group, and this group, and this group. If they ever want to change their preferences, we'll show you on the next slide, I think, how they can do that. But in this case, just ask for your email. We can find ways to collect other information and segment them later on. But in this exact form, simple one field is best for conversion.
Yeah, it's not an accident that this has one field. And what you don't see is that there is a little embed code and there's some things happening under the surface. And so someone who fills out this form is opting into certain things that they can then later edit. And to go with that, we do always like to have an email opt-in page. Now, people aren't going to miraculously find their way here without some effort on your part, whether it's promoting it or linking to it, or sometimes you're in a meeting and you say, hey, go to this page on our site and sign up for our email newsletter. Now here, it's not within the context of an article, so you can be a little bit more verbose, talking about what they're going to get, again, analogous to the print version. And you can also highlight your various interests. You can see sort of at the bottom here, there's 3 different interest groups that you can choose from, one or all. Keep in mind, where people are, what they're doing dictates how much data they'll frankly give you at that given time. And of course, you want to let them know they can always unsubscribe. We recommend MailChimp, which by default includes all the normal unsubscribe, update your preferences stuff as part of the emails they send out. So social promotions. Here we are again. I love social promotions. We talk about it all the time. You get paid to do giveaways, to grow your email list, and to grow Facebook. This is just a great way to drive email adoption. And, in this case, this is the form that someone will complete to enter to win something. And you see the checkbox. Allow Chester County Press and our sponsors to send you periodic emails. It's pretty simple. They can remove it. They can add it. But we see somewhere between 50 and 75% of entrants on average also opt into email. It's just a great way to grow your list. I think the most recent one Chester County ran added something like 300-400 emails to their list. So nice side effect for a profitable social promotion. Now, once people are coming into your list, or rather before they come into your list, but as they come into your list, they're not all interested in the same thing. And this is an area we've talked with different publishers at different times that seems to be a little confusing, so I'm going to try to slow down for a minute. This is rather specific, but I really want to highlight this. There's the notion of having separate lists, and there's the notion of having groups within a list. And if I run a magazine that's a local magazine or a local newspaper or a local periodical, and I also have a publication about turf seed that serves farmers or whatever, that makes sense to have two different lists because the odds that one person on one list is interested in the other list is very small. On the other hand, if I run a local publication and I have emails I'm going to send about featured articles, I'm going to do some deal stuff, and I have emails I'm going to send specifically to local businesses, that should most definitely be one list with separate groups. Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, businesses are different from readers. Yes and no. At the local level, sure, some of your businesses don't care as much about reading, and surely many of your readers are not business owners. However, many of them are. And so if you create two separate lists, you run into an interesting situation. Let's say I opt into your list, or perhaps you opted me into both of your lists. And I decide I no longer want to receive it, so I go through the friendly unsubscribe, and I get taken off the reader list. Well, lo and behold, a month later, you're going to send an email to that business's list, and guess who's going to get one that they don't want? I am. And I'm going to be pissed off because I just followed your very clear, very simple, straightforward unsubscribe process, and here I am getting something else from you that I don't want, and I feel like it's a violation of trust. What I don't realize is that you didn't do it intentionally. There was no malintent. It was just, darn it, two separate lists, and I unsubscribed from one but not the other. Groups allow someone to modify their preferences universally and unsubscribe universally from one basic form.
Yeah, so when you talk about email lists, you may or may not know this, but there's a very high churn rate. What I mean when I say churn rate is that every year you're going to lose a certain percentage of your email list either to bad email addresses, people move, change jobs, maybe they just don't like the content you're sending. That's a possibility. They unsubscribe. But on average, you're going to lose 31% of your list every year. And that's a big number, right? You work hard, you do the social promotions, you get people into your funnel. You don't want to give them any other reason, a bad reason to unsubscribe. Maybe it's a business, they just want to get the business updates, right? By giving them this flexibility to choose what they get, they're only going to get what they want. They're going to remain in your email list, and you'll reduce that churn rate as much as possible. Don't give them a reason to unsubscribe just because they don't want one thing that you're sending versus something else. So that's why we are a big proponent of using groups and segmenting and doing all the things. It's to maximize the value of your list, both for you and for your advertisers and for your readers. It's not a one-to-one relationship here. You got to take all accounts into consideration.
And it's not just a half-empty thing. It's true for going the other way. If I am in one of your groups and I decide later I want to add more, I can do that. If I'm in a list, I'd have to not just manage my subscription, but I'd have to go to your other opt-in form, know where it is, and separately sign up. So it goes both ways. There's also some things that I will say, given the churn rate that Ryan included here. There's some really interesting stats about how frequently you send emails and what your churn rate is, and we didn't include all of it. But interestingly enough, your churn rate will go down the more you send interesting emails. As in, even every day is quite good if people know what they're subscribing for and the content is good. Because, one, someone who's going to bail and churn and leave is going to do that regardless of whether it's once a day or once a week. But then the people who get used to it, well, you become a habit that they enjoy, and frankly, you're driving more traffic and engagement. So look at how often you can plausibly send emails to maximize that as well. So as we look at the key components of the email itself, keep in mind, every email is going to be a little bit different, whether you have ads, the type of content you want to feature, whether it's a daily email that you set and you automate, whether it's a weekly or a monthly or business or whatever. There's going to be some nuance, but we're going to highlight a few important pieces here. The first thing is the subject line. Now, this could not be more important. Bad subject lines will cause an email to reach, to be opened by 5 to 10%. A good subject line will get an email to be opened by 40 to 50% in the exact same list, right? So there's like a 10x order of magnitude difference between good and bad. Now, you might not know what the difference is, and the great thing is MailChimp has some great tools to show you examples of good and examples of things you should follow and some of the magic words that you can do. But there's also an A/B tester where you can literally say, we're going to create 2 different subject lines, and we're going to send emails to, say, 20% of our total list, 10% with one subject line, 10% with another, and the system will automatically measure the performance and then use that for the next 80%. It's not just useful in that one experiment, but it's useful to help you get a better sense of what people respond to in the long term. So use that tool. That's very, very helpful. In fact, we will A/B test almost every email that we send on behalf of publishers. The next thing is the logo and header. Clearly, simple, recognizable is important. Link it to your site. Don't miss an opportunity for someone to click it and go there. And then the feature content, right? I mean, it's the top story. It's the most interesting. It's the thing you want to highlight. Now, you've got complete control over this if you're setting it manually. If you're using the RSS to email feature to send weekly or even daily emails from your site, it'll frankly be the order of which it appears. But if you're going to go through the effort of manually doing it, highlight the thing that's going to get the most attention. In this case, we did an article all about photos and things that people, local readers, said on Facebook, given the unusual snow and weather conditions. We also, you'll notice, have those quick links on the left-hand side, which are meant to really highlight engagement and the breadth of things that people can do both to consume content and to provide it. As we continue along, you'll notice there are some ads mixed in. The banner ad for the gift certificate, the massage envy at the footer, those are obviously ways to make some money. Within the left-hand nav, sort of going back really quickly, you'll notice the quick links, and then you'll notice, in case you missed it, this is something that we'll share for stories that we want to drive more attention to, that we think have more viral interest, or maybe it was last week or the previous issue, but it played well, and, hey, in case you missed it, here it is.
You can also use that spot, say you sold an advertorial to a business or a paid placement, or you've done a sponsorship for the Homes Report, which is why I chose this specific example for the slides. This is a great way to highlight those things, and that while you're not explicitly saying, hey, I'm doing this because it was a paid opportunity for one of my advertisers, you are highlighting content that will drive traffic back to your site, which will get exposure for your advertisers. We call that native advertising. This is a great way to kind of highlight that. And of course, when you're having a sales conversation with an advertiser, you can point to it and be like, this is how we're making sure that you get the eyeballs that you want, for your businesses. We do this on email, we do it on Facebook, we do it elsewhere as well. So use that in case you missed it to highlight things, whether it's a guide or, a sponsored column or whatever it may be.
And finally, you'll notice the recent news. Whether you have 2, 4, 6, 8, 50, whatever, they have some really cool features in MailChimp that allow you to drop in pairs and then just add an image and a link. Pick the stories that are doing well. Do not fall prey to this notion of, lots of people on Facebook saw it, I don't need to promote it via email. Because unless 100% of your audience saw it on Facebook, then some people clearly missed it. And even if they did see it, lots of people are busy. I'll come back to that later, and they forget. Well, now here's a way to remind them. So the stuff that's performing well, do that. If it's really not a leading story, don't worry about having it there. People can find it in other ways. But the things you want to draw attention to can be included.
Yeah, one other thing that I really like to do here is maybe one of the 6 stories every newsletter is take something that maybe I thought was going to perform really well, and an article that I posted on my site that I thought was going to perform really well, but didn't meet my expectations. And what I might do is I might grab that experiment with using a different subject or, title. See if it was, just like you A/B test the subject line in the email, you can use this situation to A/B test, although maybe not as process-oriented, but you're effectively saying, well, maybe I just wrote a bad title, and if I tweak the title just a little bit, I'll get people clicking. You'll be able to see a direct correlation if you look at your analytics and say, either it stayed flat or because I changed this title, a bunch of people in the email clicked on it, and then you can use that as a way to determine whether you're doing a good enough job in, writing a good title for your articles. You don't have to do this every time, but if there's one that really stuck out at you, is like, man, I really thought this was going to be a good article and it fell flat on its face, feel free to experiment a little bit here. Of course, the point that Brian made about choosing the articles that are already performing well is great, because if you choose the more performing articles, you're just spreading it to more people, has a better chance of going viral and being picked up in different channels as well.
I like Ryan's idea of trying a new title, because we always have these stories, right? We don't always. We all have had these stories that we go, oh, this is going to be big, and then it doesn't really play on Facebook or it doesn't get the email response that we expect. So I like changing out the title, and you might even consider trying a different photo if you're so inclined. And should you ever be looking to fill a last spot, you can also occasionally go into your archive and be like, hey, this is from 2 years ago or 4 years ago or whatever you've got. But if it's sort of a timeless or even just an interesting story, feel free to pepper it in. And sometimes, Facebook has the Throwback Thursday, so take that approach occasionally on your email, and you can fill a spot.
The last thing I'll say about that is that don't forget to link the image as well. A lot of people will come into this section and click the image instead of the link just below it, and they're like, why the hell doesn't this go to the site? Take the extra 2 seconds it takes to do it and improve the user experience on that front.
Yeah, we're going to talk more about that on the things not to do. That's one of the ones that really bothers me. So while you've got people, and because so many of your readers are business owners, take an opportunity to promote yourself. We have this sort of standard graphic that we provide to the publishers that want it. Tells people to check out the directory and to upgrade, specifically upgrade to the premium listing, because then they'll also appear on the homepage in local spotlight, and we even include a coupon. And this is just a common element that is going to show up. I might see you go, I'm not interested. And then I see it again, oh, maybe. And then I see it again and go, okay, now's a good time. I'll take 2 minutes. And so have these elements that are consistent. The quick links I talked about earlier, the promotion of your directory, mix in promoting your calendar or whatever. I mean, you can mix in whatever, but the point is, this is your channel. Use it. Don't put it at the very top. Don't make it always about you, but include it so that people can see it and they can reference it, and it will bear some fruit for you. Beyond the newsletter, there's also some other things you can do to highlight the calendar. We talk a lot about the calendar and the directory and the importance they play. But if they're just there, if they're not being used as a tool, if they're not being linked to from content and promoted via social, if you're not sort of getting the local groups to embrace it, you're not sending invites to people to claim their listings, if you're not highlighting what they really can be, then they'll just be there. And this is one way that you can highlight some things. We love having editors' picks or upcoming events that we can highlight through articles and then share it to email, in addition to Facebook, of course. So one publisher in the Northwest has a really great list. They send a weekly 3-C email, right? Everybody likes a rhyme. It's concise. They've basically created a brand around 3-C, so that's their subject, and then they put in their stuff. So there's a lot of things you can do to highlight events. And frankly, you could do this for new directory listings too.
Yeah, and I'll say, you can do this in a couple different ways. One, you could have this be a section in your regular weekly or monthly newsletter. Of course, if it's a monthly variety, make sure you're picking a variety of events that are coming up in the next month. Weekly, you have a little bit more flexibility to pick what's coming up that weekend or the next week or whatever. The other thing is you could make this a group. People that are only interested in getting event updates, in which case you might set up an RSS email from the calendar or, do editors' picks once a week. There's a lot of different things you can do here. I think personally I like to include it in the bigger newsletter, but as you build up that group, you may introduce the option to get events only in the future. Maybe not something worth doing if you are just starting your list out, but if you have a really established list with a lot of people looking for events, then that's a great option to do a separate email just for that.
Ironically, I actually prefer to break this into a separate email for most publishers simply because it gives you another thing you can send, and there's a frequency benefit. In either case, one of the great things is if you've not used our insert content snippet feature to create articles, this is how you can create an article highlighting events. It's good for SEO, it's good for shareability, it's good for highlighting the calendar. You can talk about, hey, if you want your event to show up here, go post in the calendar and you might be here. It's also great because then you can just copy and paste that whole block right into MailChimp, and it's formatted nicely. So there's some really cool efficiency that obviously brings. Links, images, everything's preserved as you would hope. Definitely consider having links to your social profiles, specifically Facebook, of course, and calling out specific areas of your site, the calendar, the directory, etc. And the legal stuff sort of Facebook does automatically, but don't remove it. I think you can override it, but you just don't do that.
Yeah, I think you meant MailChimp when you said that. MailChimp will provide it automatically. In fact, it's law that you have to. You need to provide your address, why you're sending it, as well as give an unsubscribe link. That's been around now for almost 2 decades. So we'll talk about something that a lot of people do in an upcoming slide, and you don't have this legal speak in it, and that's really bad for you as a business. There's a difference I also want to say between share buttons and highlighting your social profiles in your email. You should do both. Highlighting your social profiles mean, click here and follow me, or view my Facebook page. Share buttons basically allow someone to share that newsletter with their friend, whether it's by email, by posting to their Facebook page, or on their Twitter account, or whatever. You might be asking, well, why would somebody want to do that? If you follow kind of some of the things we've laid out for you, they may want to share an event. Hey, do you want to go to this event with me? Or if they see an article about them, from your website, they may want to blast it out to all their friends or their parents or whoever, their spouse, significant other, children, whatever. It doesn't really matter. And if they see their business highlighted in there, well, then they're going to want to share it to their business page on Facebook and say, hey, look at this article on Mansfield Magazine, for example. So definitely give them an easy way to do that. Don't make them have to figure it out, or you'll lose a lot of that potential buzz that if it's an easy thing to do.
And the funniest thing to me is whenever I see this forward to a friend, part of me always chuckles like, really? Because you can forward any email anywhere. And then I go, oh yeah, because you might not be thinking about forwarding it. And when you see it, you go, oh yeah, that's right, I might have a friend who wants to see it. So again, this isn't introducing a new technical ability. It's just reminding people, hey, share this thing. So some things what not to do. Ryan graciously pulls together these PowerPoints every week, and then we run through them together. And I was looking at this slide, and I read the first line, and my heart rate went up, and I think my blood pressure went up. When I see that I've been BCC'd, someone sends an email to themselves and they BCC a bunch of people, I get so angry. Can't even tell you. I hit spam every time. I report it as abuse and think, man, whoever is doing this is not professional at all. I could keep going, but you can tell my sentiment is not very pleasant towards this, and I'm not the only one. I actually saw recently a local digital marketing provider, which includes email marketing, did this to me. I sent an email directly to their CEO, and I said, really? How did this even happen? How is it possible that you provide this service and yet you BCC'd me as part of a newsletter? It infuriates me to no end. Keep in mind, people can't unsubscribe. It's illegal. People go to jail for violating the CAN spam law. It's sort of ridiculous because there's no physical injury, but it's no joke. So if you have ever done this BCC thing, don't ever do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. All right, I'm going to take a minute and breathe while Ryan hits the next items because I need to come down from this little frustration.
Yeah, so the next few things are all common things we see our publishers doing. A lot of times I'll see an email go out and it will be all images or one large image. by default, if you do that, it means you have no text. And still, believe it or not, there are plenty of people out there that only, disable images on emails or only get the text versions by choice. So in those situations, you've completely, lost the ability to, communicate your message to them. So use images. Feel free to use some. Obviously, images are great. I mean, they're going to make your email look a lot nicer and much more enticing. But you also have to think about, the person that is only looking at the text-only version. You need to be able to provide context either through the titles or the descriptions or the text at the top in the feature area or somewhere in the article. You'll also see a lot of publishers put an entire article or an entire event in the newsletter. And, of course, this is a mistake because you've lost the opportunity to drive them back to your site, to look at the original article, and to create traffic for the banner ads, your advertisers, and all that stuff that you do. So that's a big one. Give a preview, choose the best image, link back to your site, and use that as a way of driving traffic. The next one on this list is something that's just usually an oversight. It's a lack of attention to detail. And it's, when you're using a software like MailChimp, they have all these great templates that, give you, predefined text areas, and they'll include the default text in there, expecting you to change it. And especially with the preview, which is the little snippet right at the top of the email, publishers forget to change that so much that I'm sure you've seen it before. People send out an email that says place default text here. Make sure you're doing that. Make sure you're checking your email. Obviously the testing is important in this case. And then, I know Brian's chomping at the bit here to get a couple words in, so I'll pass it back to him.
This mistake of leaving the default text is a really easy one to make. I actually made it earlier today. Now, I didn't send the email, but I considered the draft complete and then realized, oh yeah, dummy, go in and change this preview. Now, if you're sending a regular weekly email, write a preview in such a way that you don't have to change it. This week's top stories, events, and activities in and around such and such. You don't need to change that. In the particular instance that I'm referring to, it was not a newsletter, but rather it was like a promotional event, or rather there's an event coming up that's related to the publisher, and they were promoting it to their email list, which is completely valid. And so I was helping them structure this email, and I just left it blank. And then I went back and changed it. The reason that preview, by the way, is important is because when you're in an email client, whether it's on your mobile phone or your browser or whatever, it shows you the title or subject, and then it shows you part of the preview. So even without clicking to open it, I can get a sense. So you can use that effectively to get people to engage. Going back to the all image thing, there's actually a spam implication. There's a lot of spam filters that look at what's the percentage of the email that's image versus text, and if it's too high, they just say, no thanks, you're doing something mischievous. And please link your images. There's a publisher we work with that I'm consistently saying, you're putting these good images that I want to learn more about the thing, and I go to click, and nothing happens. And I have to hunt around for the link. Most people would just say delete. So make sure that you're linking and making it really clear on what to click on there. And the point about the entire article or event, seriously, don't do it. Don't do it on Facebook. Keep it short. Give people enough that they can have an idea of what it's about and know that they need to click through for the details. Because not only is this good for traffic, but it's good for analytics, and you'll find out what people are actually interested in. If you put up a fantastic article or event or whatever that everybody loves, but there's no reason to click, you're going to have no idea because there won't be any statistics to back it up. So definitely follow these and avoid these missteps. So there's a lot to this, and spam and email effectiveness like social media it can be tricky, but if you sound too hypey, people don't like it, and neither do spam filters. So you want to tell people what they can find. You don't want it to be like free, 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 and then people go, well, that looks weird. Do not do all caps. Not only is it the equivalent of yelling at someone, it just takes up more space and it makes it harder to read. Keep it simple. Develop a routine, and so that people know what to expect from you, and you'll start to develop a keyword and subject line approach that makes more sense. This is an easy one, but from and subject lines. I know a lot of you, your business name is very different from your publication. Do not use your business name. Nobody knows what that is. If your publication's name is, Folsom Today, but your business name is Brian's Local Media Company, if I put Brian's Local Media Company, they're going to be like, what? No way, I'm out. So keep it simple, make it obvious, and definitely be consistent. And the last thing, and this is true of everything we recommend, be a real person. You want it to feel like people are reading something from a friend. So that doesn't mean you always have to personalize your emails where it's like, hi, insert name Brian here, although you definitely can, but keep it personal. I've tried and failed to a great extent on these calls when I know there's multiple people to not intro with, hey folks, because now you're one of many, not the one I'm talking to. And so I'm trying to change my language to be more personal. Good afternoon, how are you doing? So even if you need to make it more simple in your emails and your Facebook posts so that people feel more engaged, try that, and you'll find that the engagement goes up quite a bit.
And I'll just add to that, when I say be a real person, I really mean like if me, Ryan Frisch, is sending the email, it should come from Ryan@locable.com, not info@locable.com, not some corporate address you've created to kind of hide behind, and it shouldn't come from Locable. It should come from Ryan. Now it can be Ryan@Locable, right? That's a good way to include both who's sending it and your company. But don't hide behind the corporate veil, so to speak. Be a real person. Whoever sends the email, even if it's someone, if one person is prepping the email and somebody else is sending it, choose one of the two people and do it consistently. Always send it from Ryan. Always send it from Brian. Always send it from whomever. But again, that's a spam thing. That's a connecting with your audience thing. That's just the right way to do it. I think you'd be hard stretched to find, any expert in this field to say the opposite of that. Always better to come from somebody that they can connect with than from some dummy email address.
I don't hate using emails like newsletter because it's contextual, but who wants to open something and feel special when it's like, no reply at Locable. Oh, no reply thought of me today. I'm so happy about that. So definitely personalize as much as you can. We've talked about MailChimp. Apparently I said something else earlier, but we've talked about MailChimp. We love MailChimp. We don't get paid to say this, but we do really enjoy working with them. They make it very easy for non-technical people to quickly design a newsletter. Very easy to repeat the design. There's RSS to email. So if you wanted to send out an email and you've got a home and garden section, people want to subscribe to home and garden, you could do that automatically. I wouldn't recommend that particular example, but you could. We've also got a video that Kevin, our publisher concierge, put together for one of our publishers on our YouTube channel. This walks you through the process of doing a weekly newsletter specifically focused on your ITI that's in this issue post. Obviously, if you don't have a print component, the ITI doesn't apply to you, but you can still do it for sort of a weekly digest. That's about a 10-minute MailChimp tutorial there. So feel free to check that out on our YouTube channel. So monetizing emails, sort of wrap up on the payoff. Obviously, email is a fantastic traffic generator. And the more engaged people are, the better your brand is, the more you can monetize your website, and frankly, the more you're going to sell in print if you have a print product because people see you. But you can make money from email itself. Obviously, you've seen banner ads. Ryan talked a bit about some of the native / advertorial paid placement stuff. That's fantastic. What you see here for Athleta, can't remember which one it is, you can read it, is a dedicated blast. Now, this you would charge a good deal more for, and you need to be very mindful of not doing too much, and also mindful of sending it to the right audience. If your group is comprised of 95% men, you might not want to send this particular one unless it's focused by your significant other something, at which point then it would make sense.
Yeah, I'll also add here that this is another great reason to do segmentation, right? If you have a list of people that are explicitly looking for deals, offers, or whatever from their community, doing an exclusive blast, that group is a lot different than blasting your entire list, especially if that includes, updates for businesses or, other groups that are completely irrelevant to this. So, choose wisely. don't just blast everybody on your list, but this is a great way to, someone like Athleta, and Athleta is owned by The Gap. They're a huge advertiser, comes to you and says, hey, we need to reach people in your local market. You're like, that's the perfect opportunity for you. We have 2,000 people on our email list. We have so-and-so on our website. We can put a campaign together to help you out. And in this case, I know that Best of Central Vermont, as well as I believe it was What's Up magazine, they both did in-person events in conjunction with Athleta to promote their store openings in their specific areas. So clearly, there's a lot you can do on the email front from this perspective. And as opportunities arise, you don't have to turn people away. Just make sure that charging for an exclusive blast is a lot more than what a banner ad would pay or a native ad would pay for an equivalent kind of thing in an email.
And just to clarify, Ryan talked about two different publishers who ran something with them. Unrelated, not choreographed by the publishers, but the point is Athleta was looking for local markets that they can do work with and happened to work with two of the publishers directly. You'll notice that we call this an exclusive blast. In almost all situations, I don't like the phrase email blast. And in fact, there's many articles deriding it because it sounds like you're spamming people as opposed to sending them stuff they're interested in. In this particular case of a dedicated email, I think it's fine, but I would not use the word blast in association with anything else because it's not a blast. It's not a shotgun blast. It's ideally it's more tactical. It's more specific. Last two things. You might have heard me say earlier that the calendar and the directory are tools and things that you can use. Wouldn't you know it? If someone's going to post an event, if someone's going to post a directory listing, especially paid or featured respectively, why not give them a little love? Highlight it. Tell people, hey, if you do a featured event, if you do a premium directory listing, we'll include you in an email from time to time. Not in a exclusive capacity, but mixed in and link out to it. Or perhaps if they get a great 5-star review, you'll sort of quote part of that and link back to it or whatnot. So there's definitely more you can do to extend what you can do. And, of course, that value makes it easier to upsell premium listings and featured events because it's part of the package, not just the base benefits. So hopefully this has been a useful overview. Again, if you're looking for something nuts and bolts, how do I actually create the email, you can follow that video on our YouTube channel. And if you want some help with us to run any of this, go ahead and get in touch with us, and we're happy to chat about what we can do to elevate your game locally. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next week.